Okay, Perik Vav, Aloha Hey, Kolasoni Echu Misra Belibo. A person who hates a Jew in his heart, meaning the one you hate is not aware that you hate him. It's only in your heart you have this negative feeling towards him. Over below says you're in violation of a negative commandment. Shenemar quotes a verse: "Lo sisna es ochicha bilevavecha." Don't hate your brother in your heart. Seems to be. I mean, if the prohibition's hating, what difference it make if it's in your heart or you openly hate him? But the Torah says specifically only in your heart. Vein loket alav zeh, but one is not subject to lashes when you violate this. Lefi shein bo maseh, because the only negative fem when you're a violation in transgression of is only if you do it with an action. You proactively violate it. Hate is just a state of being. Therefore, it's considered you're violating it without an action, not subject to lashes. Now, the Rambam goes to explain. The Torah only prohibits hating a fellow Jew in your heart. Why? Avo, but a person who hits his fellow or disgraces him, which clearly indicates you don't love him, okay, you're disgracing him, although you're not permitted to, you're not in violation of do not hate your fellow, even though you're hating him. So what's the difference? When you hate him in your heart, the only one who knows you hate him or dislike him is the person who hates him. When you openly attack him or you disgrace him, like embarrass him, so that it becomes known what your feelings are. And the way it's explained is this way. You know, there's an expression, a person's two-faced. Outwardly, you're friendly, but in your heart, you're plotting against him. So the person believes he may be his friend and he's his enemy. So it's important for a person to know exactly where the other person stands, to take whatever precaution has to be taken. So therefore, the prohibitions don't hate your fellow in your heart. Only where you're the only one, he's unaware of your position versus him. But if he knows you're his enemy, he knows what precaution to take. Of course, you're in violation of the pasuk, you must love your fellow as you love yourself. But the negative commandment of do not hate your fellow, that only applies if the fellow is not aware that you hate him. Okay? So I was just thinking, as we're discussing this, what about you have somebody living in another community and you publicly tell people, I cannot tolerate that other person. So the other person is unaware of your position versus him. So for all intents and purposes, you could actually mislead him at a distance because he's not aware of what you feel, although you shared your feelings with others. Are you in violation of Are you in violation of hating your brother in your heart? If the whole reason is because he's unaware and he doesn't know to take precaution, well, here he also doesn't know to take precaution because it's only within the proximity of those who we shared it with, but not the what? Not the person who he hates. Seemingly, since ultimately it could get back to that person, you're not in violation of hitting your brother in your heart. It's concealed as between yourself. We find that the Torah speaks about the strife between Yosef and his brothers because Yosef had dreams and he believed he would dominate them. And it turned out they were prophetic dreams. But the Torah tells us, Lo yochu daber l'shalom. When the brothers met Yosef, they could not look at him, they could not speak to him in the context of peacefulness. And that's considered their praiseworthiness. Normally, a person who dislikes a person to that degree, you don't show your true feelings. So therefore, you plot against that person because you don't want him to know where you stand versus him. But the Torah tells us no. Yosef's brothers openly displayed their hostility towards him because of what he did. So therefore, whatever precaution Yosef has to take versus them, he's aware of it, fully aware. But that's lagit shvocho shalachim. The speak tells us the praiseworthiness of the brothers that they did not conceal their true feelings from Yosef, although they couldn't tolerate him. I once told a story. My mashgiach, Tzaddik Levrocha, was a very holy man, and there was a student in the yeshiva, came from Chicago, and he was a very smart person, genius type. He had a PhD in chemistry and other things. And if you're a mashgiach in a yeshiva, you try to keep a tight lid on the boys, it should be structured. Nobody goes outside of the structure. And this person, literally, he did whatever he wanted. And he was an older person. He must have been a student who was 22, 23 years old at the time. So that kind of student's very hard to rein in on them. So he goes over to him. He says, I want to tell you something. I cannot tolerate you or your behavior. And he says, the reason why I'm telling you is because there's a negative commandment, you're not permitted to dislike, to hate your brother in your heart. So if I wouldn't share it with you, I'd be in violation of concealing this feeling towards you. So I'm sharing it with you, so I should not be in violation of it. This is the degree to what my mashgiach could not tolerate the student, because he was disrupting the whole equilibrium in the yeshiva, because he went and he would break rules. And because of his age and whatever else, my mashgiach couldn't rein in on him for that reason. Until the David prays that God should reveal his enemies to him. He says, those who are my enemies, I know who my enemies are. I'm not concerned with those, but I'm concerned with those who I think are my friends and they're my enemies. Those are the ones I'm worried about. My enemies, I know exactly how to deal with my enemies because they're my enemies. But those who I think are my friends and my enemies, those I'm not aware of who they are. So please protect me from those people. Same idea. The continuation, same concept. Number 6, if a person sins against his fellow, lo yistamenu v'yishtok, he should not hate him and remain silent. As the way the evil behave, lo diber Avshalom es Amnon me'uma, limora v'atov. Avshalom, Amnon raped his sister. And Avshalom was livid, was infuriated. And he didn't display outwardly good or bad. And he was waiting for the moment that he was going to kill him. And Avshalom killed him for what he did to his sister. Kisoni Avshalom is Amnon. Why did he not show his feelings, positive or negative? Because Avshalom hated him. Avshalom, the son of David, who's the son who rebelled against his father and wanted to kill his father, he himself hated Amnon. And lemitzu olov lo dio lo malo. There's a mitzvah. It's incumbent upon the person to say to the other individual, Lomo sisli kach v'kach. Why did you do what you did? Which is the basis why I hate you. V'lomo chotosli b'divar ploni. And why did you sin against me regarding a particular issue? Shenemar hochech tochech semisecho. When you see your fellow doing the wrong thing, you must inform him he's doing the wrong thing. Vim chazar ubikesh mimenu limcholo. If after you speaking to him, he asks for forgiveness, the person who offended you, who hurt you, whatever it is, tzarach limchol, you have an obligation to forgive him. If the person is sincere, asking forgiveness, you should forgive him. V'lo hamochel arzori, and the forgiver should not be cruel. Not forgiving is due to cruelty. Shlema v'yispal Avram el Elokim. We read in the Torah when Avshalom, the Philistine king, took Sarah, Imenu, because he thought at the time it was Sarah's sister, and he nearly defiled her. It says, all of a sudden, he was smitten, him and his household, and God comes to Avshalom in the Avimelech in the dream. It says to him, if you don't return the man's wife to him, you and your whole kingdom will die. You will all die. And it says because the husband is a prophet, and he knows you didn't rape her. He knows you didn't defile her. And only if he prays for you will you recover. If he doesn't pray for you, you're dying. Avram prayed that Avimelech, the Philistine king, and his whole kingdom, they should be healed. But after what he had done to Avram, taking his wife, putting this fear into him, God forbid, maybe he raped her. Sorry, man. Nevertheless, he forgave him. So what does that mean? He was not withholding. He was mochel. He forgave him. So a person should not be arzori. It's cruelty. When you should forgive and you don't forgive, that's cruelty. Avimelech, I'm not sure how much he deserves to be forgiven. But a person who shows he sincerely regrets what he did, you should forgive him. And if you don't, the words of Rambam, you're arzori. You're a cruel person. It's due to cruelty. If you see a person drowning, God forbid, and you're able to save him, and you don't save him, what did you violate? This is a negative commandment, Torah. Lo samar al dam reyecho. Don't stand by while your brother's blood is being shed. Meaning, while your brother's is actually drowning, dying, if you have the ability to intervene and save him, and you don't, very serious level of culpability for not saving him. You see a person being attacked by hooligans, and he could really be hurt very badly, and you're able to intervene and stop it, you have an obligation. Of course, you're not putting your own life in jeopardy. What about if you could hire people or pick up a phone and call the police that they should intervene and you don't? You're in violation of this negative commandment. Don't stand by while your brother's blood is being shed. Okay, that's what it's about. So now, you see a Jew is going astray, giving up his Judaism, and you're able to intervene and of course, you have language with that person. The person, you have a capacity that you could influence that person. That he's not going off the cliff. To bring him back, and you don't. Do you have an obligation? No, do you have an obligation? That's the Rambam here. Rambam writes, Haroah chaveru shechoto. One sees his fellow sinned. Oh, sholach b'derech lo tova. He's taking a path which is not a good path. Mitzvah lachzir lemutov. You have an obligation, a mitzvah, to bring him back to a good path. Give him an understanding what he's going to do is not acceptable, and what he will do is something very valuable. Ulodio shuchote ulatzmo b'maso v'roim, and to inform him that he's the victim. He's victimizing himself by doing the wrong thing. People think you're hurting others, you're hurting yourself. Shenemar hochech tochech esamisecho. You should inform your fellow. Hamochiach es chaver bein dvorim shebein beinu leveino. Whether it's area between man and man, that's where the person has to be rebuked, has to be admonished. Bein bedvorim shebein mokom. Between him and God. You have mitzvahs which between man and man, man and God. Wherever it is, if you're able to somehow make a difference and bring him back, that's your obligation. Read a story, there's a book, it's published by Art Scroll just recently. There was a Rebbe, came from Russia. Originally was born in Romania. He was in Russia and Ukraine for many, many years. And he was a very holy rabbi. He was like a wonder rabbi. He did things which were miracles. And there are literally hundreds and hundreds of people who were beneficiaries of the miracles he performed. So this is not just a hearsay for fairy tales. This is firsthand experiences. Many people hundreds that could attest they were beneficiaries of the miracles he performed for them. So there's a story. After he left Russia, he received an exit visa. He spent 6 months in Israel before he came to the United States. And he was a person that in Russia, in the winter, he would go and immerse himself in the river when it's 40 below zero. Like nothing. Because he felt for the sake of purity, and due to that, he was able to do phenomenal things. He achieved the level of holiness and purity. So he was in Bnei and he went to a certain mikveh. He comes out, and there were a group of children, 9 of them, who they heard so much about the Rebbe, they wanted to see him, and they wanted to receive a blessing from the Rebbe, the holy Hasidic rabbi. So his attendant tried to shoo him away. And if after the Rebbe had gone to the mikveh, if anybody would touch him, he would go back into the mikveh. So these boys were waiting outside the mikveh, and they wanted to shake the Rebbe's hand. He's a holy man. They want to shake his hand. So the Gabbai says to them, if you shake their hand, to them, if you shake the rabbi's hand, you're going to force them to go back into the mikveh. So one of the boys said, are we contaminated? That if we touch the rabbi, it's going to validate the mikveh he went to? That's what he said. He's a young boy, he was 11 years old. Okay? So he comes out of the mikveh, and the attendant tries to shoo the boys away. They're all listed bar mitzvah. And the Rebbe says, let them alone. Let them alone. And he goes and he shakes every one of these young men's hands. And they wanted a bracha from him, a blessing. And he says to one of them, you will be a good Jew. And just remember, you're going to be a good Jew. That's what he says to one of them. I have no idea what it means. Then he says to another boy, and you're going to see that he's going to be a good Jew. It was like esoteric. I mean, they were all from observant families, committed at this age. Okay? Fast forward a little bit. The Rebbe goes to America, and he's already a man in his 70s. And this young man, of course, has that very strict education, Torah education. And then the boy started to become a troublemaker. And they had to send him out of the school. They couldn't teach him. His father sent him to a yeshiva in New York, in Brooklyn. Maybe it was because he wanted to separate him from his friends, and they weren't good influences, whatever. He comes to the United States, to New York. Eventually, he drops out altogether, becomes totally irreligious. He comes from a Hasidic family, becomes irreligious. Okay? How religious, we're not sure at this point. All of a sudden, he's back in New York. He's back to Bnei Brak. Today, he has long hair beyond the shoulders. His arms are tattooed. That's what he looks like. And he has this long blonde hair. He's walking down the street in Bnei Brak. And all of a sudden, he sees this person. So the Rebbe had said, someday you will be a good Jew. That's what he said. Who would think he wouldn't be a good Jew? And all of a sudden, look what happened. Years later, he took a left turn, and he became this person, long hair, tattooed, gave up Judaism totally. He's walking down the Bnei Brak. You could imagine what kind of sight. Everybody was looking at him. This kind of person you don't see walking down the street in Bnei Brak. And all of a sudden, this young boy who was originally one of his friends, who today's a grown adult, a married man, sees him, and he recognizes him. And they run towards each other, and they embrace, and they start crying, and they start talking, and this and that, whatever happens. Okay? And kissed him, and they caught up at old times. What happened? Okay? He departs from his friend with the long hair, disappears for 2 years, goes back to New York. He knows nothing. Knows nothing what happens. He gets a call from this young man's parents that their son became observant again. He joined Chabad. He became a Chabad person. He's marrying a Baal Tshuva in Chabad, and he's going to establish an observant family. That's what they find out. Now, why did the mother make the call to this young man who was a friend of their son's? Because their son had shared with him that when he met him in Bnei Brak, he kissed him and he hugged him. So the mother says that, you know why my son returned to Judaism, being so far away? Because you showed him love, because you kissed him and hugged him, and you showed him friendship. That's why he came back. That's what the mother shares on the telephone with the other person, why his son came back. So he says to the mother, he says, I want to explain. The reason why she came back is not because I kissed him and hugged him. Not at all. The reason why he came back is because the rabbi had given the blessing that he's coming back. And just as an aside that he said that, I should remember he's be a good Jew. I should remember means that when I meet him, I'm going to respond and I'm going to embrace him. Could you imagine? This is being like 20 years prior to this. He already had forecasted that's what's going to be. So one has an obligation to bring a fellow Jew back and to inform him that he's doing the wrong thing. And if he returns and he asks for forgiveness, you must forgive him. Otherwise, it's cruelty if you don't. הרואה חברו שחוטא או שהולך בדרך לא טובה, מצווה להחזיר למוטב. ולהודיע שהוא חוטא על עצמו במעשיו הרעים. And you must inform him that he's doing the wrong thing for himself through his evil actions. שמוכיח תוכיח את עמיסךו, המוכיח חברו בין דברים שבינו לבינו. A person goes and admonishes a person, rebukes a person for areas that he transgressed between man and man, or areas which should be man and God. So you have to do this privately. You can't rebuke a person publicly to embarrass him. It has to be done very, very inconspicuously, very very low level. There's no mitzvah to embarrass a person. And when you speak to him gently, soft-spoken. And the words you choose are not caustic words that bite, that cut right into him. And you have to tell him while he's speaking gently to him, softly to him, that whatever you're telling him, it's not that the one who's telling you has to score points. It's nothing to do with him. Only it's the good for the goodness of the one who he's speaking to. To give him a chance to have a share in the world to come. The Mishnah tells us about Mitzvah that if you find the lost article of a Jew, you must return the lost article of the Jew to the Jew. You must try to locate him. What about if you find the lost article of your father and the lost article of a stranger? Whose lost article takes precedence to return? So the Mishnah says you must return the father's article before the stranger's article. Why? Because if not for your father, you wouldn't be alive. Because your father fathered you, that's where you exist. So the greatest debt of gratitude that you owe to your father and mother is because you exist. What you do with your life, that's up to you. But factually, that any opportunity you have, it's due to because they brought you into this existence. Therefore, that's the level of understanding you must have, and that's the level of thankfulness. What about if the beneficiary is only in the spiritual? It's not in physical. Okay? 1 second. let's say, excuse me, the father and a Rebbe. Your Rebbe lost a lost article and your father had a lost article. Whose lost article do you return first? The Rebbe's. Why? Because the rabbi is giving you a share in the world to come. Your father brought you to the physical world, but the Rebbe, the teacher, brought you to the world to come. And that's what we're talking about. A person chose the wrong path to take. And he's going to maybe forfeit a share in the world to come. And you have to explain him why you want him to come back. Not for you, for him. Because he doesn't appreciate and understand what he's giving up for basically nothing. What you think it's something, comparatively speaking, it's nothing. Laviu, he explained, Shomalo el latovoso. Laviu l'chan labo. If that was enough to convince him, it's good. You don't have to do more than that. And if it doesn't help, you come back a second time and a third time to admonish him, tell him what his obligation is, and he just can't turn a blind eye on this and not listen. Okay, I think we'll stop here.
Thank you,